All right, sweet.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my freaking camera's back. We did a session, what was it, on Friday with Chris Rabidou from the Breathing Process, and I do apologize that we weren't able to have the camera on hold, on hand. That's what I meant to say. But we are doing another session for the Anatomy Podcast. This time, people, we have Ian from Recoil and Horror. Now, to say the least, this session and wanting to get this done has been, in the vague works most of the year. We've been talking about it back and forth, and while we both got busier with other stuff, and we thought that it would be nice to have everything scheduled according to the big old project that Ian here has going on for Recoil and Horror, their debut, which we're going to be talking about plenty here today. Ian, how you doing, my friend?
I am doing very well, man. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. People,
Awesome.
like, I'm telling you, the vaccine is so much worth it. Like, it's so worth it. It's free. Go get your safety poke, people. Like, do it for the sake of everybody and yourself. I'm only a little bit sore, but yeah, that's something to kind of throw in there. I got my
It's
vaccine. I never thought I
it's
would.
free. It's free and it's super easy. You just
Exactly.
go in there and it's said and done, man.
Yeah, it's like a little flu poke. And on top of
Yep.
that, too, just like briefly speaking on that, do not quote me, audience, and everybody really. But I was reading an article, or I saw an article pop up that if you're able to get at least a vaccine shot, possibly both of them, by Halloween, you get financially reimbursed for it too. Like this is like federal
What?
stuff. Yeah, like $100 or something. That's what I was seeing. And I'm like, wait, what? Why would they pay us to get this done? But again, don't quote me on that. There's a little article I saw, but maybe that's a reason to get the vaccine. You're literally getting
You
paid
take
for
you
it.
take that $100 and you put that in Dogecoin.
All about that cryptocurrency, yeah.
Yeah, you get some crypto with that.
But yeah, to say the least, we got Ian here from Recoil in Horror, which is apparently consisting of none other than Brandon from Worm Shepherd. I did not know
Absolutely.
that. I had no idea about that, but that's really cool. A little small world we got going on. Because if y'all didn't know, who are watching this right now, I run Worm Shepherd's little community, and Ian here is also a part of it. I invited him in, and he's made himself nice and comfy. So have a lot of other bands that I've collaborated with, had on the podcast, etc. But go join Druid House, because on the 14th, which is in 2 days, people, things are going to explode for them. But back to Recoil and Horror.
Absolutely.
So, basically, as per the Anatomy podcast, the formula we have provided and sustained throughout this entire year, which it's almost like it feels like it's been a really long time since we got this started, from To the Grave to just a whole bunch of different bands in the scene, and it's been really cool to tell their stories. But that is what we do here. We have the first half in which we are really learning the story of the people behind the project, the people behind the band. And then as we migrate into the second half of the podcast, we learn all of the juicy questions that the average music enthusiast could ever inquire on, including and not limited to where the band's name came from, where the genretic idea came from, per se, like how did they define their sound, what's going on. And we also utilize the Anatomy podcast as a promotional and marketing engine, people. We are here to help them promote their debut chapter or their next chapter. Really, it is all significant. These are chapters in people's lives where they are contributing a lot of creative effort. So, today, it is Recoil and Horror's turn to tell their story. So, Ian,
Yes.
tell us all you want about yourself, where you came from, how you grew up, and basically how you got into music itself.
All right, so I'm from the Pacific Northwest. I've always been in between Vancouver, Washington, and Portland. And music was actually super limited in my household for religious reasons. I'm not religious at all,
Right.
but it was really restricted. And so what I started doing is I started taking my lunch money and I'd go to music stores and I would buy albums that I wasn't supposed to listen to and hide them in my backpack. And so that's when I got into shit like Pantera, Metallica, like as a wee lad, and then slowly progressed into things like Slipknot and Chimera and Fear Factory. And that's kind of where my fascination for this stuff came from, is because I was limited to having access to it. So I would just go out and find it on my own.
Yeah.
And I became obsessed. And then I started going to shows, local shows, like, and right around that time, that was about 2004. So like that was when deathcore really started blowing up with like All Shall Perish and Job for a Cowboy, Suicide Silence, and bands like that.
Right.
And that's where I kind of started making my first bands and had the privilege of playing with some of these bands and opening up for them. And I've always just loved music. It's the only thing I've wanted to do since I was little.
Yeah.
Outside of video games is probably the only thing I'm really good at. And for me, it's just I'm not really happy until I'm playing on stage. Like I'm all about the live performance. I love recording and I love writing and all that stuff, but performing live is my main drive behind why I am a musician.
Right. It's a cherry on top.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's really cool because again and again on this podcast, we have so many bands coming through in which they got their main inspirations. Everybody so far has at least said Slipknot. And, you know, now we got more of the person who's defined by the deathcore genre, the stronger generation, the stronger era, early 2000s for deathcore, in which, I mean, All Shall Perish, Eddie, he's now migrated into Suicide Silence, got Job for a Cowboy, who are AZ locals, baby. Glendale, Arizona.
Glendale, yep.
Yeah, really cool.
I remember seeing them on MySpace when they released Doom. And this is before they were going to sign to Metal Blade, and they said that they weren't going to do it because they'd have to redo everything.
Right.
But they did it anyways, which I think was really smart for them.
Right.
I remember when Doom came out, that shit was fucking insane. There's nothing like it.
Yeah, and I do feel ashamed as a person who is developing into a blackened deathcore. You know, that's the trend now, genre-radically, is just like blackened symphonic deathcore. But I have to admit, I have not listened to Job for a Cowboy that much, and I feel bad about that. So I'm definitely going to be plugging into them here pretty soon. And I know Impending Doom is coming out with a new record. I haven't heard anything from Job for a Cowboy, though. So
I think J-Fat is going to come back eventually. They've talked about it. Like they're gonna release something again. I wouldn't be surprised by that.
Right, and there you go. We got new music from legends. I mean, eventually around the corner. People have definitely been talking about it because apparently they're such a legendary band. Other people I've collaborated with and had on this podcast have done covers of their content. Mac Luke from Indonesia.
Yep. They're hugely influential, man. Hugely influential band. Their first 3 albums are like some of the best albums ever.
Huh. Yeah, definitely have to listen to them. So, I mean, you got that stronger early deathcore genre, and that is what helped define you musically. Now, I know you have a Twitch. I know you have a bunch of other creative mediums too. So I like to play devil's advocate and ask, if it wasn't for music, what creative medium would you be participating in? Would it be gaming, or would it be something else?
It would be gaming for sure. And I was actually thinking about going to YouTube gaming or to Facebook gaming, just because the market I feel is less saturated and a little bit less toxic. I mean, there's gonna be toxicity anywhere you go, but I would probably do gaming. If not, I would probably do comedy or acting, actually, because I like entertaining people.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. It would most likely just be gaming.
Gaming. Yeah, there you go. Hell yeah. And like early on, like in your early childhood, when you were first kind of sneaking those Pantera CDs and all the other stuff into the house, was there anything back then that you were plugging into that, you know, you completely left behind now?
Fucking the original Nintendo, dude. I fucking begged my parents for years to get me one, and they were totally against it. And then I got it, and then they tried selling it because I just wouldn't get off of the fucking thing. No, that's like just what I've done, dude, is gaming and music. Like, that's it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I used to play. I dabbled in Magic the Gathering for a while. Like, I'm a giant nerd, bro. Like, I'm such a fucking giant nerd.
Me too.
I used to play ranked Magic the Gathering when I was a teenager too, but that stuff is so expensive now, so I just got out of it.
Yeah. It's like basically, and I kind of walked that similar path, really, because I was doing gaming for a long time, and then I also wanted to get into like airsoft and stuff, which is, you know, very niche. But the thing is, because it is so niche, it's, you know, a non-lethal sport that involves real-looking guns per se. It gets really expensive really fast.
Very, very expensive. I was
Yeah,
gonna do that with paintballing and shit too, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this stuff is
yeah,
fucking ridiculous. I can't
exactly.
afford that as a kid.
And yeah, and then dude, on top of that, growing up, I had buddies who went to arenas in the AZ local area all the time. But at the end of the day, because I didn't have those opportunities and stuff, I just realized that for one, the pricing to go to professional quote airsoft arenas or paintball arenas, it was just ridiculous. You know, you'd pay 60 for a day, and I'm like,
Yeah,
I could just go in my backyard or go maybe like 5 miles from my house where there are desert trenches and just
do it
use
for free.
those. Yeah, exactly. Do it for free. Like avoid the neighbors, of course, because you know backyards right next to these floodgates and stuff. But you know that's about it. It's like
Yeah,
otherwise you got yourself an airsoft arena. We also had like floodgates, very similar to like sewer tunnels and stuff. Maybe
yeah.
about my height back then, which I'm a pretty tall dude. But you know, just like really goofy stuff. And then I realized after a bit, funny thing, after plugging into Skrillex and Deadmau5. So like
Yeah.
I started off with EDM and stuff.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I think it was because I was addicted to the bass, and you know now I kind of progressed into wanting to be a bass player and stuff. But I mean, yeah, that's about it. Just like kind of taking that similar path and prioritizing music instead. That's more or less what I was trying to plug in. But let's see. Speaking on all of that, you said Pantera, you said Slipknot.
Mhm.
So you like really deathcore. Was there any one band that you could isolate to being the one that really sparked the flame into you wanting
So
to be a musician or even a
yeah,
deathcore musician?
so when bands like Slipknot, Chimera first came out, like that was like kind of like the evolution of metal at that point.
Yes.
You know, getting at least for me in high school, that's what it was. And then deathcore came like right after that. And I was at a Best Buy and I saw Winds of Plague's album, and it was the Decimate the Week album, and it had the samurai in there. I was like, dude, this shit looks fucking awesome, because I was like into anime and shit. And so I picked that up, and I believe that they were on Century Media at the time. And so
Okay.
on the back of the pamphlet were all these bands that were signed to Century Media. So I literally went and bought all of those band CDs off of that one flyer on the CD.
Nice.
And so this is kind of crazy. So that was when I was first introduced to the Cleansing by Suicide Silence. I'm wearing like one of their old print hoodies right now.
Right. Okay.
And they became like, I had never heard anything like that. Like I was like, oh my God, dude, this is like death metal, but with breakdowns. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And so I got into that, and then I was playing guitar at the time. I was doing backup vocals.
Okay.
And so Mark had a little arpeggio section in there, and I was like, oh my God, those are sweep arpeggios. Like that sounds sick. And I was getting into that from All Shall Perish as well. Like I knew who All Shall Perish was from like MySpace and stuff.
Right.
And so I was like, it just changed. It changed me completely. So I was making bands here in my area and doing tours. And then I'd say about a year after listening to The Cleansing is when I started actually opening up for these bands. And I got to meet Mitch 3 months before he passed away in his accident.
Right.
And that's where I actually met Eddie Hermida, and I still talk to him to this day.
Right.
And that's where I really met a lot of those guys. But for me, it was always Suicide Silence. It will always be Suicide Silence that really made me want to do heavier music. And then that's progressed since then. Like bands like Beneath the Massacre and Super Tech Death, the bands like that, like Archspire and stuff like that, are some of my favorites now. And also Jonathan Huber's from my area. He used to be in I Declare War, and then he went to a Pathology, and he's doing something else now. I forget what it's called, but he's the vocals for that as well. And he was with Cam Big Chocolate from Disfiguring the Goddess, who's actually who used to be north of me now. I'm not sure if he lives in Arizona or California, but I swear that he was from here originally. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But then I got big into Disfiguring the Goddess, and that was the first time that I really heard like over orchestrated synths and like big kind of like big orchestrations into deathcore.
Yeah.
That was like that was technical deathcore too. I was like, dude, this shit is fucking slamming, and that kind of just changed my whole life. And Cam was tight with Mitch and Suicide Silence and all that as well. So that whole like little group of people is really what influenced me. And then I got lucky enough to play shows with them and open up with them, and then make some friends with a lot of those guys. And I cherish that tremendously.
Right. No, that's really cool. And speaking on those earlier times when you were opening for these bands, was the project Recoil and Horror or something else?
No, that is. I'm actually not going to bring the name of that band up because no, it's fine. I'm just not going to say what it is. But the old drummer from that band is now currently my drummer now in Recoil.
Okay.
Which is fucking cool. But there was a lot of bad blood when that band broke up, and so I kind of just don't want to give credit to those guys, to be honest with you, at all. I don't want to give credit to them, so I want to say thanks for the memories, but I'm in a much better place now.
Well, I mean, there you go, man.
That one.
Transparency and no context, no details. That's completely fine.
I lucked out though. My drummers, two Brandons in Recoil. There's Brandon Cooper and then Brandon Dorman. Brandon Dorman's been my friend since almost 15 or 16 years. He's fucking insane, phenomenal drummer. And he's my drummer now in Recoil. And he was actually taken up for I originally wanted to have him as a drummer, but he was touring in some other bands.
Right.
And then I just happened to randomly ask him, I'm like, hey, dude, if you are not touring right now, would you please join my band? He's like, dude, I don't have anything going on. I'm fucking all in. So I really lucked out with him.
Awesome. And, there you go, full circle.
For a while there, we had Elijah Losh from Awada doing drums for us because he lives in the area. But that was just like some session drumming. Yeah. And Awada's his big thing, and he goes and tours Europe a bunch. So it's like it just didn't really work out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, stuff like that happens all the time. So, I mean, that's just how show business, that's how music works in general. You got all these hundreds and thousands of bands, and that's even still a tiny fraction of all the projects going on simultaneously. And new projects are always coming out and starting every day. So, I mean,
I heard some ridiculous, I don't know if this is a correct statistic because most statistics aren't correct anyways, but I heard something ridiculous that it's like in between 3 to 5% of the population of the world actually even actively listens to music. Whoa. Like all music, not just metal, like all music, like even super popular music. Only 3 to 5% of the actual population of Earth listens to music regularly. So I don't know if that's right or not, but I heard that somewhere. It's a very small percentage of us, which blew my mind.
Well, that's definitely a clickbait article right there. It's just is that true?
No one's actually listening. No one's listening to anything.
Yeah, seriously. And the thing is, I, as a hippie and as someone who believes in the multiverse and the golden ratio and stuff, when literally I came into the enlightenment of a theory consisting of everything in creation, in existence, consisting of complex and almost intelligent sound waves. I'm like, there's no way that music doesn't influence everybody, period, in at least some way.
You're talking about vibrations. You're talking about vibrations? Yeah, okay, I'm familiar.
Right. So, with that creation theory in mind, despite all my religious beliefs and stuff, that's impossible. There's no way.
Yeah, that's weird, right?
Who knows? Yeah, exactly. A world without music would be a very strange one because, that would be a pretty silent.
I'd be fucking miserable.
Yeah, I think a lot of us would. But no, that's really weird. I gotta look that up sometime. So basically, we so far have a story to where majorly influenced. You are part of the community, part of the scene. You got to see legends before they left us, unfortunately.
Bro, one of the coolest fucking shows I've ever played. I was still in high school. I opened up for fucking Botch and Dillinger Escape Plan and Poison the Well at the Paris Theater. And Dillinger Escape Plan obviously blew up to become huge. And back in the post-hardcore era, so this is after Earth Crisis and shit like that, you had bands like Poison the Well. And I was still a young lad, dude. I mean, I'm talking 14 or 15 years old.
Right.
And I played for them at the Paris Theater. And I remember when I had no idea who Poison the Well was. I just knew that I was opening that night. And I had my friends going, dude, do you know who this band is? And I was really naive at the time.
Yeah.
I'm still learning stuff. I was just fucking excited because I knew that these bands were something bigger than me. And we got to fucking open up for them. And so I'll never forget that show, dude, because there were so many people on stage when Poison the Well was playing that their Marshall fucking half stacks were shaking, dude. And like there are people coming up on there to grab the cabinets and they wouldn't fucking spill over me. Fucking stage diving and just crazy. It was the craziest shit I've ever been to. The Paris Theater can probably hold like 500 people max. I mean, I'm talking, and that's shoulder to shoulder, wall to wall, 500 max.
Right.
And so it was just like, when it was like over, I was like, dude, who the fuck was this band? You know what I mean? So I went and got the, I'm not sure if they were tearing on Tears for the Red or the opposite of December at that time, but whatever it was, I was like, dude, oh my God. And then Botch was from the Northwest as well. They were a hardcore, like mathy hardcore band,
right,
like Dillinger. And then that really cemented me in as well too for technicality of music.
Yeah, hell yeah. Well, I mean, let's see. We got 6 minutes. That's I think that really covers everything, and I do appreciate you sharing all of that story because, you know, that's important stuff, and that's really what the Anatomy Podcast is all about, is telling the story, absorbing the perspective of all of the awesome musicians in our scene. So I do really appreciate that. And shout out to, well, all of the projects and bands thus far who have brought Ian to this point, because I'm sure you're vibing right now, to say the least, in life.
Yeah, man. I love music. Like, music literally is my life. And I love all the new deathcore and shit now, too. That's the big thing of Recoil is I take the old school elements where I was founded, and I like to include and implement new age elements that are present in the scene now, because I'm older, but I'm definitely not like kind of like that boomer mentality.
Yeah.
Like, because without like things like Black and Deathcore and other bands that, like, I love Varials and bands like that, like without those influences and those sound changes, I wouldn't be doing the music that I'm doing now, because I don't really feel that there's rules to music when you're creating it. You should just be creating something that you enjoy.
Right. And to make that on a more general perspective, people coming from two creative minds, there is no rule to creative, endeavors in general. You got people who want to kind of isolate certain ideas and certain ways of doing things, but in reality, do whatever the hell you want, as long as it doesn't hurt people. Like,
absolutely,
honestly,
absolutely, 100%.
So as we move on into the second half, the juicy bits that are talking about the band project itself, we got the story covered, so now we get to move into the, like, this is going to be cool. I cannot wait. So one of the first questions that I usually ask the people I host is the band name. Where did Recoil and Horror, like, where did that come from? Was it your mind child, or, did someone just like random about it?
It was mutual. No, it was mutual with me and Metal Chick. That's my partner, my manager, my girlfriend.
Right.
She was in a car accident, and I wasn't even doing a band at the time. I kind of I have a really good career and stuff, which I'm going to eventually leave to go back touring again.
Right.
So I have a career and stuff, and I was kind of done. And she really believed in me continuing music. So we went to the car accident, and she was recovering, and it was a really dramatic thing, obviously.
Yes.
And I'll never forget when I was talking to her, and when she started telling me about how she mentally understood that she was like in trouble. She said that it made her recoil in horror when she was like, when her brain was like putting together the shock and trauma that her body had been severely damaged. Right. And she said that it made her recoil in horror. And it was kind of something that it didn't kind of stuck with me. It stuck with me. Yeah. So, a year and a half later, after, she's recovered and we're like starting to take this music more, seriously again. I was like, dude, what fucking album name do we have? What are we going to come up with for a band and all this other stuff? And then I was thinking the one major positive that came out of that car accident was the music that we're creating now.
Right.
And so I'll never forget when she said that it made her recoil in horror. And I was just like, fuck it, let's do it. I'm usually against like 3-word bands, like, Bringing the Horizon or Between the Buried and Me. Like, I love those bands, but I've always been more like I like Nihilist, or I like, Kill Seed or something like that.
Right.
But I was like, fuck it, I'm doing a 3-word band. I went against my own thing. Like, it's now we're doing Recoil and Horror.
Right.
And so that's always like a constant reminder to me about like where it started and what this means to us.
And that's actually really cool. That has to be the best answer that we've had on the podcast so far. Because to be brutally honest, and I mean I get it. It's a heavier art style, it's a heavier culture per se, it's an edgier culture. You think
Right.
of the music that we make, you think of violence, you think of
Right.
unfortunately slam in which they're talking about murder and all these very violent things. And then,
Hmm.
for the most part, when I've had people on the podcast before, let's see, there was I want to say To the Grave, I think.
Hmm.
Like literally, they just came up with that on the spot. Just simply plenty of bands who have kind of improvised on the names and haven't really had a story behind it. But that is really, really personal. That is like
Yeah,
super
it's
personal. It's super important.
honestly too, if I had it my way, like I probably would have been, and I'm glad that I went that way because I feel like it's that name is a little bit more approachable to people because I would have probably named something like you said, like in the slam category that was a little
Yeah.
bit more violent and putrid, just because I'm kind of like that. Like all my subject material is pretty much in your fucking face when I write about it.
Right. Right.
So, I probably would have ended up calling the band like fucking, I don't know, disfigurement something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Like one of
You
those
know?
two word
Yeah.
bands or
Yeah.
like.
Too. Yeah.
I have to say the only cringy thing about slam band names right now has to be the ones that end with ectomy, like
Yeah.
organ
That's the running
ectomy.
joke.
Yeah,
That's the running joke right now.
right. Oh yeah, true. That and like let's see, it would have to be the two name bands like you just described. It would be like
Yeah.
dismemberment discography
Yeah.
or something like that. I'm
Yeah.
like, give me a break, man. I hope that's just a joke.
Mine was going to be something like slaughter rapist or something. It would have been straightforward.
Yeah, right, right. Slaughter
So
the rapist. That would be
slaughter
good.
the rapist. That's most
That's.
likely what I would have gone with. I mean, I'm being dead serious, man.
I mean, at least you're honest. At
So,
least you're honest. Unfortunately, and like it's cool for the sake of the podcast and all of my creative mediums thus far, but like quite literally, everything that I invest into creatively from now
right.
into the future, and since I've really been creating in general, always has depth to it.
Yeah.
And what's the story behind that? And literally it's a campfire story worth of narrative
Right.
to go with it, especially my
Absolutely.
tattoos. Like I want to do that for all my tattoos, period, but that's a different story. That's this is Recoil and Horror, not Sean Cross.
All right.
So
That's fun.
so to say the least, we got a pretty personal and awesome answer for how the band name came to be. Now, how about the lineup? How
Oh
many
man.
lineups
Yeah.
have there been? Where did
That's a good
everybody come
question.
from? And obviously the lineup now is pretty awesome.
So the lineup now is comprised of or made up of my old drummer from my old band, Brandon Dorman, and then Brandon Cooper is a part of the band as well. And he, before Worm Shepherd started and before Recoil and Horror was really kind of going to become a full band, I had met Brandon via Aaron Shapirian, who's the producer.
Yep.
And so Brandon was always a really big supporter of what we were doing. And around that time, I think Brandon had released Charlotte with Blue Rivera.
Right.
And so when I heard Charlotte, I was like, dude, holy shit, this is really pretty. Like, this is like, I like really pretty music too.
Yeah.
Really, really well written melodic stuff. I love that. And I just was like, dude, this song is just brilliantly written, And I started talking to Brandon, and he's just a super, super sweet, amazing, awesome, badass guy.
Yeah.
And so we've always had that mutual like brotherhood right there.
Right.
And he's always been rooting for me and big supporter of what we do. My second guitarist, Sean, I was in a slam band with him called Turok, and I think we're going to release an album eventually. I don't know. It's in the works, but
Yeah.
I needed another guitar player here for local shows that we're doing. So that's Sean said that he would do that. And then my other guitarist, James Knapp, who is the core writer and the core guitar player. He lives in New York, and I met him via Aaron as well, and through one of the old members of the band as well too. And so James is now the creative writer, the main lead in that, and I do kind of the synth composition and the vocals and stuff.
Right.
I kind of do the quality assurance thing, and then Aaron does all the magic in the studio, and then James does the majority of the writing.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. So that's actually a pretty good plot twist. So if I'm understanding this correctly, you are the vocalist, but does he cover lyrical content too, or do you contribute some of that?
No, I write all the lyrics.
Right.
And then I've been playing guitar for about 17 years now. So on the album, there is one song that I wrote about 80% of, and then Aaron went in and added some other stuff. So it's about 80-20 in that one, but James did a lot of writing too. I do co-writing when it comes to guitar stuff. A lot of the synth composition I write, and then I do all the vocals, all the lyrics, and all that stuff as well.
Right. I mean, yeah, doing more than just lyric writing, which
Right.
I just haven't descended myself into learning guitar that much. Like, I know how to play chords and do all that stuff, but that's really cool. That's actually super, super cool. And, you got all these different people from all across the country. I can only imagine that, in Metal Chick has mentioned this before too. Everybody's just like really spread out. So I can only imagine that.
So Sean, my guitarist Sean lives here with me in Oregon, and so does Brandon. And so kind of like how we're gonna do this is when it comes to West Coast shit, like I'm just gonna backtrack bass and secondary guitar that way.
Right.
When it comes to if they can't make it out here and we're not doing a tour, we're just gonna backtrack for West Coast stuff. But when it comes to full on tours and stuff, the whole band is gonna be together at that point in time.
Oh, good. Okay.
So,
Awesome.
I actually kind of modeled this idea off of Dan Watson from Enterprise Earth.
Right.
I heard him when he was in Infinite Annihilator, and then I'm not sure if Myrlore or whatever that was came after that, and then Enterprise Earth. But when he started doing Enterprise Earth, I think he was just working with a couple people for a studio project, and then he actually started. I think his bassist was from Canada and stuff like that, and I was like, holy shit, like. This remote stuff is a possibility if you can't find people in your area.
Yeah.
Like he's literally doing it right now. And so I was like, well, fuck it. If he can do it, I can do it too.
Right, exactly.
So
and yeah, that's a bigger story. With that concerning Dan Watson's bands, it was Infinite Annihilator, Enterprise Earth, and then he kind of crammed Myrlore in there.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, extra little detail, the only reason that Myrlore exists is because him and collaborators on the project were just testing out a new drum set. So that's why that's why the drums on there are so Infinite Annihilator and just absolutely blasphemous crazy. Yeah, because they were just seeing what the drums could do, and well, they did a lot. So little fun fact for everybody. Yeah. But I mean,
so basically, for a joke here, I get a lot of people that are new listeners to Recoil that will message me and call me a Brand of Sacrifice ripoff. I'm totally not ripping them off. I'm ripping off Dan Watson, so get it right.
Well, there you go. There you go. At least you're honest.
Not music wise, but strategy wise.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, that's a strategy too, because you got circumstances like as of recently in which they didn't really disclose the details per se, but apparently Dan had to stay home and stuff, and Enterprise Earth went on tour with the vocalist of Godhead or something like that.
Is that who he's from?
Yeah, he's multiple projects, but he's kind of like he kind of reminds me of Garrett Russell with just like, he's scrawny, he seems pretty clean, he's got like little stash and goatee and curly hair. I'm like, dang, he's doing it right. But yeah, you got especially with the pandemic, man, you got these circumstances to where for the most part, not only if you can't write and find musicians around you, you find people across the country, but also when we got what's going on right now continuously, and it's kind of the same answer.
And to address and to elaborate a little bit more on the question too about the lineup changes and stuff like that.
Yes, right.
I'm gonna have a really direct answer for you. Okay. And I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. So what happened there is, it started out with with one of my good buddies that lives in Canada. His name is Joe. I've actually known Joe for like 15 years. He's a drum instructor. He's a professionally sponsored. Like, he's a really solid guy. And then the pandemic hit, and it caused a lot of distress in his life, which is understandable. So sadly, he had to go. And I was really excited to work with Joe because I'd known him forever. Like, he could fly for free. Like, this is pre-pandemic. Like, it's like, dude, this is going to be awesome. He has his own studio.
Right.
And sadly, he had to go. So then I had some guitar players that were from used to be a really well established band in that 04 era. And they joined, and that did not work out for the reasons of, I'm a pretty straightforward person, and I don't like being manipulated into setting a certain style or way. And I felt like the original vision of what I wanted this band to be was becoming distorted.
Right.
So they simply just did not work out because I don't agree with a lot of policies that people do in the industry, and I don't agree with a lot of ways that people go about things. I'm a really honest, straight up person. And so if I feel like I'm kind of taking shortcuts or there's a way to achieve something that is dishonest, it's not for me, man. I don't cut corners in this at all. And so that is why they were displaced of their own regard, not of mine. But they wanted different things out of this than what I wanted. So they were easily replaced when that opportunity came up.
Right.
So I had to say I have that to say.
Yeah, there you go. Get it off your chest. Now you can breathe.
Yeah.
Like, and that's also just like the really complicated thing about being or wanting to be in a band, wanting to be a musician, is when, for example, you are the collective father of the project, right?
Right.
And over time, it's like you have people who either aren't even musicians, or at least for me, I've had that experience so far being a creator. I've tried to find multiple candidate musicians, and basically they're just in the project to say, "Oh yeah, I'm in a band, man," or whatever. And basically over time that just became constant, and then basically you're running the project yourself, whether lyric writing, whether graphics, all that stuff.
Mandy does the majority of the office work and the social media and stuff. I do the majority of kind of organizing. And the weird thing about this band, man, is when we're ready to go and play shows, thankfully that's going to be a lot easier, and we kind of have a hand up compared to other bands, which I'm very thankful and grateful for.
Right.
The odd thing has been the amount of hangups that we've had between getting this album out and getting the music video done, and all that stuff is coming. It's all going there, but there's been there's just been a lot of the easier things for bands, like getting the graphics and getting the music and getting all the stuff out there usually comes first in the shows. We kind of like have the shows there, and we're trying to get the best quality content for what we have out to people to make an impression. So, and I feel that we're definitely doing something different with this album, and I'm definitely proud of it. And everyone has worked their ass off super hard on this, and I'm really excited for people to hear it.
Right, and that's really cool. And we will definitely be discussing that throughout the remainder of this session. So don't you guys worry. Like, this is going to be really, really sweet, exclusive. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be hell yeah. It's going to be really cool. But yeah, so you've chewed through quite a few lineups, whether because of creative differences or people just being affected by things in their life, and that happens all the time. So that's also another purpose for this podcast, ladies and gentlemen, is to kind of give you an insider look on how the average musician in the heavier counterculture scene operates and how everything happens within the band. That way the question's like, man, is it even worth it? It's like, yeah, it's just, there's a struggle, but there's a struggle with all beautiful things in life, no matter what. And all things that you're willing to fight for, well, that's what you need to do in life, is what you're willing to fight for, what you're willing to wrestle people with, whether in a business sense, a creative sense, or just, a social sense, I guess. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, that's really cool. It's really,
and
really
awesome. Something else to add to that too, man, is even like if Recoil were signed right now, we'd already done a couple tours, it only gets more difficult the more and bigger you expand. There's always going to be a challenge. And so it's constant work, and it's probably the hardest thing I've had to do in my life. And my real 9-to-5 normie job is pretty hard, but doing music full time and doing it because you love it as a passion and that's what you want your occupation to be like. To me, it's just like a cool minimum wage job that I can go and fucking tour around and have fun and love my life. You can always improve, and there's always going to be a new goal or obstacle for you to overcome or approach.
Yeah.
So that's something to also keep in mind.
Yes, definitely. And there you have it, folks. Words from another wise musician in the scene, in which Recoil and Horror is about to make its debut. So, we got your first record, your first full length, coming out this fall.
Correct.
What is the name of it? I do apologize.
It is called Amalgam. And amalgam means a blend of metals, a blend of alloys. And so going off of like where we first started, I'm come from like kind of that 04 era. Yeah. So like you kind of have like your base metal there. and like my influences there. And then you have all this new stuff coming in, like Blackened Elements. You have these crazy bands out there like Artspire and Varials and other stuff like that. And it has those staple like feels to it with all this new edge flair on it.
And that's awesome.
It's how it's like deathcore made by Michael Bay. it's got explosions in it, and every song is different and every song tells a story. But it's a blending of metals, and I thought that was appropriate because there's young people in my band and older people like myself.
Exactly. And that's actually a super, super awesome idea. Amalgam, just a blend of different metal alloys. You got the traditional metals mixed with the newer metals, the newer, harder, tougher metals and stuff like that. And then it also reflects on the people, which that's such a genius idea. I love that.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, of course. So, digging under what we can what can we expect from Amalgam? We got the genres and stuff, the people behind it. What else can we kind of I don't even know how to say it.
Oh boy, man.
Without revealing too much, of course.
I think that it's going to. Okay, so when I made this album, I was like, man, how do we? There's so much there's really good, really good music out there. Like, like I'll use Worm Shepherd as an example. Like I remember watching Devin doing vocal covers and stuff like that, and I just knew like, oh my god, this kid's got it, like this guy's just got to get some people and he's like gonna be okay, what I mean? And then I saw this kind of like whole black and deathcore movement move through, and I was like, well, I really like a lot of that stuff, but it's just not me at the core. But I want to take elements from that. I want to take the stuff I do like, that I know that I can do well, because I don't want to do something that's not authentic to myself.
Exactly.
So I was inspired by Black and Deathcore, and then I've always loved Fear Factory, and I've always loved Chimera for their weird fucking industrial stuff, but I don't really like industrial 100%.
Right.
So there is industrial elements in this big time, littered all over. There's keyboard elements like symphonies, big math. I mean, it's if Deathcore could be kind of like kind of have a movie soundtrack, I would say that's what Amalgam is, man.
Right.
It's a concept album, but it's really crafted us into. I'm excited for album 2, if anything. I've heard, album 1 is done. We're working on distribution and stuff like that right now. I mean, the album is complete.
Right.
And so is the music video. We're putting the final touches on everything, to get it in a good package for everybody. But like when you listen to, there's a track called Lamia's Rot. That's pure ass beating, like technical death metal. That's all that song is. And then you listen to a song like Scholar, and that's like this psycho synth, like Thalish, like who knows, dude? Like it's weird. It's different.
Yeah. And
so
the biggest
every song, I hope it leaves someone going, dude, what the fuck was that? For at least one part of every track. I think that's what we've done here.
Okay.
And I feel like we've managed to make something unique, when it's really hard to do that.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful and appreciative of all the hard work that Aaron and everyone else in my group has put into it.
Oh yeah. And shout out to both Aaron, shout out to Brandon, because, same
Absolutely.
world as Worm Shepherd. And, that's basically up to this point, running their community now, which has been an honor.
Yeah, man.
Definitely small world, and it feels, it kind of feels like I'm part of the band too, but not at all.
Yeah, absolutely. No, everyone's a part of the bands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's what's cool, that where I feel so fortunate with Brandon and Aaron especially, is like everyone in these communities and in these groups, it's like you're all members to some degree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I've got to hear all the cool stuff before it was released. Like I'm sure you have too. I'm sure you've heard snippets and previews. And it's like, wow, dude, this is really cool to be a part of something where you get to hear it before, everyone else does. And like Brandon has the whole Recoil album, and I'm sure some of his friends have heard it too.
Right.
So, it's really weird too. I got to say with the album, man, being on it and creating it, the feedback that I got from people, because I gave it to other people, I'm kind of like Johnny Depp doesn't watch himself act. Like he'll do the movie and he's like, you watch it. So when the album was done, I was like, hey, you guys listen to this. Like, I'm really like, I'm just like that. And the feedback that I got from the certain people who are not just like oh, everything you do is great. No, they're like very critical.
Right.
And the feedback I got from it was overwhelming. And so that's when I knew. I was like, well, if they're saying this, like,
Yeah.
I guess I'll have a listen now. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And
exactly.
so I'm really proud of it, and I'm very thankful because it's been a fucking long road just to get this shit done.
Yeah.
Album 2 is gonna be way easier to get finished because like we kind of have this fluid dynamic figured out now. We're
Good.
putting all the puzzle pieces together.
And that's really the
So,
beginning in the journey of becoming, I would say, like,
right,
basically I'm in a concept project. I'm not in a band, nothing like
right,
that. But it's taken pretty long for me just to get to that official band point. So I'm like, yeah,
right.
I think I know what he's talking about. But
You know, it's kind of no, I do absolutely because when I did Recoil with Aaron, my whole purpose was just to find a band that I could go on tour with.
right,
Like I didn't want to run a whole band. Like I wanted to like contribute to an already active band.
right,
And I wanted that to just be like a technical death metal band, like Archspire or Beneath the Massacre, because those
yeah,
are like my big influences. And everyone was like, dude, just do Recoil as a band. Like it's gonna be awesome. Do Recoil as a band. I'm like, I don't want to do Recoil as a band, dude. It's like a lot of work.
yeah.
And here we are. Recoil is now a band.
Exactly, exactly. And sometimes,
So,
man, you just got to make those steps forward and see how it goes. I know,
yeah,
I know, I'm sure as hell. I know I do, because
absolutely.
basically right now, Blind Without Our Failures, which is going to be the name of the project,
Right.
and I love the name. We got a logo; it looks so good,
Yeah.
but basically, it is down to two vocalists, in which one of them, his name is Tyler. Shout out to Tyler. Dude looks like Chris Motionless, right?
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, every time like at least once when Motionless last came to town, I actually mistaked him for Chris.
For
I'm like,
Chris.
oh, what's up, Chris? He's like, no, man, it's Tyler. I'm like, oh shit, but still, hi. Like really cool stuff,
Yeah.
and it's an awkward stage right now. We got at least 4 different release projects worth of lyrics. We got the logo,
Right.
we got everything. But the thing is, we have a guitarist with 2 kids who's in Chandler, busy
Right.
working at Amazon, 9 to 5. And then we have our, I don't even know what role she decided on. We were planning on having her be our drummer. But she has a college level education in graphic art design, and she is like
All
heavily
right.
preoccupied by graphic commissions around the clock, all that fun stuff. So really, it's the perspective of, yeah, I mean, all these bands, the struggle, the grind, the stalemate before you release a project or release just like get a release out there, get a song out there or two.
And then too, when it all comes together,
Yeah,
something unexpected will come up too that will put another challenge to it. It happens
exactly.
often, man. I lucked out with my old bands. Like I will say that, like if there's one thing positive from that outside of my current drummer and the connections and the memories that I have, it's that I really lucked out because coming into this and doing again like you said with busy schedules and with lives and stuff like that, and then just life in general, the things that we don't have any control over
Yeah.
that impact us, it's very challenging. It's very difficult.
That's the first challenge, people.
Yeah,
Coming from someone who's not even in an official band, who's contributed
it takes a
lyrically.
while.
Yeah, it
It
takes
takes
a
a while,
long
man.
time. But I mean, thankfully, I'm only 21. I'm not 25 and being like,
Oh, dude,
"Why can't-"
you're a baby, bro. You got
Exactly.
like compared. Yeah, you're gonna be fine, dude. If you keep doing this, you'll make it all right. If you're only 21, whoo,
Yeah.
you got plenty of
I
life,
don't
dude.
look 21, but
Yeah.
that's how it works. But
All you
um,
kids look super. You're not kids. You're a young man. I was just saying,
yeah,
like
yeah.
all you guys. I'm like, oh man, these guys are all early 20s. Like, I'm like, fucking 40 is a lot closer for me now than it is for the fucking 30 something
Oh,
is.
that's
So
crazy to think about, man. But I mean, the way I see it, we never get old. We just get older because we're not here for a long time.
correct,
So
correct, man. This is
stay in your
true.
youth. But
Absolutely.
briefly, before we go ahead and head out, I was
Hmm.
curious. You were saying that Amalgam, right? That's how you pronounce
Yeah.
it? Okay. So
Yeah.
Amalgam, you said, is a concept record. So
Correct.
what is the concept going on? You don't have to dig into it because we can do that
No,
another
that's
time.
fine. No, yeah,
Um,
it's totally cool. Basically, the concept is kind of like what we went over. Every single song in there has a reference to a band that I've either played with or has inspired me.
ooh.
Every single song was written with a shout out to the grave is in there.
Oh, sick.
Suicide Silence is in there. even newer bands and stuff like that. I do reference Worm Shepherd and one of the songs too, because when Brandon joined, there was a section of a song, and I'm like, dude, I don't know what to put here, and I'm like, oh, I know what I'm gonna do now, you know.
Yeah.
I reference Poison the Well. I reference Dark Soul. I reference some video games and stuff in there too. It's
Right.
not really a video game concept album, but um, what I've done is I've also taken people's stories who I know that are survivors of domestic abuse or human trafficking, because I volunteered with them, and I've known people that have survived. And so a lot of my lyrics that I write about are from the pain and the anger of those experiences. And so I kind of crafted this storyboard about how do we take real life serious things and then tell them in a way to where it's almost like a Pan's Labyrinth, where it's like a fantasy story.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's what I've kind of done with their stories, to either protect their identities but still get their story out for what it
Yeah.
is, and to talk about serious subject matters that are hard to approach to a new listener or somebody that does care about that stuff. People like down the road, like, hey, you realize this guy wrote this about this, right? And I think when people learn that, it gives them a different perspective on what they just wrote
Oh yeah.
or what they listen to. So that's kind of like, for whatever odd reason, sadly, it's been a reoccurring theme in my life, that I've met people who are survivors of very severe abuse and very, very severe human conditions in general.
Yeah.
And so that's been my writing formula. And I'm I've gone through that similar type of stuff with them. And
Right.
so this hardcore music and metal music and death metal music and deathcore was really the one outlet that I had that made me push on through the day and made me feel not alone and made me feel like I could continue through life and I could be successful doing that. Like I remember listening to Shai Hulud, Given Flight Through with Damon's Wings, I think that song is.
Okay.
I'm probably butchering that, but they're an older hardcore band. I saw them with Shadows Fall and Cephalic Carnage, and that whole album, like, that was like one of the worst points in my life. And I remember listening to these heavier bands, and like they made my day way easier. They made my life much more enjoyable to continue through.
Right.
And so this whole album is basically saying thank you for making this music, and I'm taking people's stories that also have had severe challenges, and I'm giving life to their stories, and I'm validating the things that these people have experienced.
Awesome. Well,
So
ladies and gentlemen, yeah, that's Amalgam in a conceptual sense. Produced or not produced, provided, contributed, discussed by Mr. Ian here of Recoil and Horror. We had an awesome session here tonight. Plenty of awesome questions answered. Well, not awesome questions. Questions answered in awesome ways. There you go.
yeah, thank you, man.
Let's not
Thank you,
put our
Sean.
ego.
I appreciate this, man. This is awesome.
Hell yeah,
Thank
man.
you.
And to say the least, people, we are back in full swing. It was really only the camera that was giving me issues, but now, like right after this, I'm going to be doing plenty of reactions. So that should be really fun. And again, Mr. Ian, thank you for your time tonight, and be sure to enjoy the rest of it.
Thank you, man. You as well. Thank you so much.
We'll do